Hi students, today we're talking about senior portraits. Today I want to show you a series of senior photos that I took of my niece Andrea and just use these as an example of how you might take great senior portraits. Now I wouldn't say that all of the samples I'm going to show you are great. They're a sample of the pictures I took all in one day in a series of locations, and I just want to give them to you as examples, and I will refer to them again later so you can see some things you should do and should not do when taking senior photos. Shot in lots of different locations, in lots of different lighting conditions. We tried lots of different poses, and as you can see, there's a real variety here. As with all types of portraiture, you want to remember all your rules of portraiture about lighting and about the direction of the shoulders and how they're pointing, as well as the light source, where it's coming from, and the intensity of the light. You need to think about what's in the composition, the rule of thirds, as well as any potentially distracting elements in the photograph that you want to avoid. But as you can see, we have a real nice variety of portraits and photos, and she was happy with the results. And there you go, that's the last one. Now let's go on back here to the slides. I want to talk a little bit about, first of all, the camera you should choose to use and the settings of that camera. If possible, try to find an SLR camera, a single lens reflex camera, to use. The quality is better, get better pictures. However, a point and shoot camera, compact, will work as well. But if you're going to use either an SLR or a compact point and shoot, try to find out if it has a portrait mode on it. You can see on the dial mode here the little picture of the person that's circled in green. That's the portrait mode, and it's designed particularly for taking pictures of people, of portraits, because it will give you a shallow depth of field, making the background blurry, and it will be used well. Now if you're going to do an environmental portrait where you want a lot of the background to show, then you wouldn't use the portrait mode, which is something we learned in the first unit of this course. Large format. Take the picture at the largest format that's available on the camera. For example, on my point and shoot, I've got L, M1, and M2. M stands for medium. And L is the largest resolution, meaning it's going to be the largest number of pixels. It's going to be the largest file size when completed, and therefore it will allow the final user of the picture to enlarge the picture as much as possible to get larger portraits printed, and they may want that as an option. So take it at the largest format available to you. Also find out if your camera allows you to change the f-stop setting. The f-stop has to do with the aperture opening inside the lens. A smaller aperture has a larger number. You want a large opening in the lens, inside the lens opening of the aperture, so that means you want to find and use a small number f-stop. So usually the smallest on most cameras will be around an f1.4 up to an f3.0, and so find those numbers and use them. Again, if you don't know how to do that, look at your user manual to learn how to change f-stop settings. Use a moderate telephoto long lens. And again, this can be changed in different ways. If you have interchangeable lens on an SLR, you can change to a telephoto. Or if you're just using a point and shoot, you can just zoom out to a longer lens, moderate long lens, not real long. I also encourage you to use a tripod, because a tripod will eliminate any camera shake, which will cause blurriness in your pictures. There's different types of tripods. You can see two simple types here that you can use. Alright, location. Lots of students want to have pictures taken in multiple locations. As you saw from my niece Andrea, we took them in probably 6 or 7 locations. I would encourage you to use at least 2 to 4 locations. Wooded areas, streams, bridges, railroad tracks, old buildings, and fields of wildflowers are great options. Here we took a picture of Andrea in front of a local sign in Bellingham, Washington, where she lives. You can see that in the background, kind of nice. We have a brick wall here. This is often used as a background. It creates a nice pattern, but yet is not too distracting. We live near the water, so we went down there near the railroad tracks and pilings, and they made a nice background with the water as well. Another brick wall. that worked well was some kind of old signage on the brick wall. Here's a picture using a railroad car as a background. There's lots of different options. I also encourage you to ask other people where they've taken their photos for ideas on different locations. Lighting is so important in all photography. You want to, again, usually take your pictures either very early in the morning or in the evening when the lighting is more diffused and less intense. Also encourage you to try to shoot more on a cloudy day versus a very sunny day. Here's an example of a not so great photograph. You can see Andrea is actually squinting. There's a lot of light coming at her, and so it's difficult for her to open her eyes. That's not a good look. So we encourage you to take on a more again, cloudy day without such intense light. Also watch for shadows. Here's a nicer photograph in terms of the lighting. However, we see a shadow along the left side of her face, and that doesn't look good. That'll ruin a photograph. So watch for shadows. I encourage you, even if it is a somewhat sunny day, try to find filtered light. This is an example, a great example of lighting for a portrait. She's actually underneath a tree, and so that tree and the leaves are filtering the light and creating better lighting conditions versus being out in the direct sunlight. You have to watch when you're under a tree, though, that you don't get patches of sunlight falling on the face, but I've avoided that here. Okay, clothing and props. Encourage the person to wear solid colors and avoid any busy patterns in their clothing. They could try to wear a uniform, like a sports uniform, a cheerleading uniform, or maybe a letterman's jacket. You might also want to introduce props into the picture. Maybe they play an instrument, or they compete in a sport, or they have an animal, a pet, that they want to include in the picture. Here's my nephew Colton with his dog, and makes a great photograph to have the dog in as well, or a horse, as in this example here. And here's Andrea again, and she plays soccer. So we went down to the soccer field. You can see the soccer goal in the background, as well as she's holding the soccer ball. Makes a great portrait. And we can also see here an example of an interesting point of view. I got down really low on the turf and on the soccer field and took her picture, including that line on the field, which makes an interesting photograph. So consider the different ways you might include background, props, different types of clothing, etc. in your picture to tell a story. So now you're out on the shoot and you're getting ready to start taking lots of pictures. What do you do? Well, I want to encourage you to try lots of poses. Sometimes you think a pose might look kind of silly or goofy, but go for it. Try to have them stand in different ways and take different poses, because you might just find that a pose that you think won't work actually becomes their favorite one. Andrea really liked this, but at the last minute we just decided to try it. Here's a different pose on that same railroad car, and she leaned backwards like that. Again, seems like a strange pose. Maybe at the time she felt a little funny doing it, but it turned out to be one of her favorite photos from the shoot. Remember the 4 rules of traditional portraiture from our earlier lessons. Again, you want to angle the shoulders and not be square to the camera. You want to have the lighting at a 45-degree angle. You want to fill the frame and avoid distracting backgrounds. And you can see these different rules of portraiture have been applied here, and it makes a nice portrait. Take lots of pictures. This picture here was one of the last pictures we took on a busy day of shooting, and it ended up again being one of Andrea's favorites. And if we had stopped and not taken as many portraits, we would have missed this shot. So I encourage you to take lots of pictures. Okay, that's it for an overview of taking senior portraits. You can go on and find the assignment for this unit and get out there and take great pictures of your friends, and who knows, maybe you'll make a career out of being a portrait photographer.